first scripture reading is the 78th Psalm, verses 1 through 7. And I'll be reading from the Common English Bible, which is different than your Pew Bible, if you're following along in that. Listen, my people, to my teaching. Tilt your ears toward the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a proverb. I'll declare riddles from days long gone. Ones that we've heard about and learned about, ones that our ancestors told us. We won't hide them from their descendants. We'll tell the next generation all about the praise due the Lord and his strength, the wondrous works that God has done. He established a law for Jacob and set up instructions for Israel, ordering our ancestors to teach them to their children. This is so that the next generation and children not yet born will know all these things, and so they can rise up and tell their children. And to put their hope in God, never forgetting God's deeds, but keeping God's commandments. That ends the reading of the Old Testament. Now from Hebrews chapter 12, verses 7 through 17. Bear hardship for the sake of discipline. God is treating you like sons and daughters. But what child isn't disciplined by his or her father? But if you don't experience discipline, which happens to all children, then you're illegitimate and not real sons and daughters. But what's more, we had human parents who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? Our human parents disciplined us for a little while as it seemed best for them, but God does it for our benefit so that we can share his holiness. And no discipline is fun while it lasts, but it seems painful at the time. Later, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness for those who have been trained by it. So strengthen your drooping hands and weak knees. Make straight paths for your feet so that if any part is lame, it will be healed rather than injured more seriously. Pursue the goal of peace with everyone and holiness as well, because no one will see the Lord without it. And make sure that no one misses out on God's grace. Make sure that no root of bitterness grows up that might cause trouble and pollute many people. Make sure that no one becomes sexually immoral or ungodly like Esau. He sold his inheritance as the oldest son for one meal. You know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected because he couldn't find a way to change his heart and life, though he looked for it with tears. But this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I know Debbie talked a little extensively. I'm going to talk a little bit more, but it's a little more abbreviated than my usual messages for your sake, right? So we're not here till 12:30, so it won't be too bad. But 35 years is simultaneously hard to believe and quite a feat, right? And not many organizations can say they've served a community for more than 35 years, especially when the first community consisted of more swampland and orange groves than it does today. But here we sit, looking out onto this congregation, among the people that have had direct connections with and an impact on the preschool, and others that maybe have worked in the periphery or are just now hearing about the preschool for the first time too, and that's okay. So wherever you sit on this spectrum, a lot of people have had their hand in making this preschool function and work and excel the way that it has. And so I think we've heard that testament from Debbie, who both she and Claire have been here for over 30 years, which is hard to imagine that they started working here when they were 10 years old. Can you believe that? It's hard to believe, right? 60 years collectively between them, leading and teaching at this school. But all that being said, I feel there's one aspect of preschools, and to be honest, kind of just teaching in general, that parents and grandparents do not always want to do. It's a very common theme in our reading from Hebrews this morning, that of discipline, right? Now I know this word often gets a bad rap, and generally it carries with it many negative connotations, but it must be important for it to be included so extensively in the Bible, right? So let me highlight one particular verse that stood out to me, and that's kind of the theme for this morning's message. Hebrews 12:10, which reads, "Our human parents disciplined us for a little while, as it seemed best for them. But God does it for our benefit so that we can share in his holiness. I know discipline is fun while it lasts, and it seems painful at the time, but later, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness for those who have been trained by it." So to me, that kind of clearly indicates that we maybe need some discipline in our lives, at least in some kind of form, right? Throughout many areas of it, and even for our beloved children. But the wonderful news in all of this is that a trusting, loving, and caring environment, such as this preschool cottage and a Tuskawilla Presbyterian church, we don't have to do that discipline alone. We can have help in doing it. So others are here to help us, which can be a huge relief. Now look, I get discipline is challenging, right? It's heartbreaking. I don't like seeing my children cry when I have to lay down the law and be strict with them on certain things. Most people don't enjoy disciplining their children, or especially their grandchildren. So it breaks my heart to see them upset and kind of in tears. Please don't tell my children that, though. I don't want them to know that it does actually affect me when they get upset, right? But we can help each other maintain some kind of discipline in life, and it behooves us to not cave in and to maintain our disciplinary ways. So in the short term, yes, it can be excruciating, but in the long term, the children and we will be much better off for it, right? In fact, I was home with the three girls one night this past week while she was out. So during this time, I had a secondhand witness to disciplining that surprisingly came through one of our children. So I was doing our typical bedtime routine where we've gotten our ready for bed, gotten the clothes on, brushed our teeth, and we got to the point of what I call the endless search party for the 3 missing water canteens. Happens every night. Daddy, I need my water. So I've got to find 3 water bottles strewn about the house somewhere. So as I was out searching for them, I overheard something both endearing and impressive. Apparently the 3 girls were all playing together in Raylan and Skylar's room, which they share a bunk bed and one room together. So they were having a good old time until I heard a decent scream come from the room. It wasn't a blood-curdling scream like someone had seriously been hurt or one of play, but it sounded somewhat serious. But no one came to me, so I figured, everything's okay. I don't have to worry about it. I'll continue searching for these water canteens. So nevertheless, I went back in there to get the lowdown of what actually happened. And this is how my 7-year-old daughter, Raylan, broke it down to me. She said, Daddy, Tatum, our 2-year-old, bit Skylar on the bottom. But then I took her and I put her in timeout. But she was not happy, and she did not stay there very long. And that was the end of the story. But what I got out of this is that our oldest daughter recognizes what we do with discipline and thought she'd try it for the 2-year-old who knew she did something wrong. You can't bite people, right? So she tried to enact her own discipline and put her in timeout, much to no avail. But she tried. So children learn from us. They learn what we do and what we say and how we act. And so this is one kind of small example of learned and somewhat kind of effective discipline. But even deeper than that is an understanding that discipline is not always about consequences or punishment for actions that someone did or did not do. Sometimes discipline can refer to maintaining healthy habits or exhibiting self-control in situations where it's desperately needed, such as avoiding temper tantrums or eating healthy portions or abstaining from engaging in unhealthy practices or habits or substances in life. So discipline can cover on all manner of bases in our own lives and the lives of others. In fact, most of you by now have probably seen the commencement speech given by the Navy Admiral. He's talking and he says, one of the most important acts that we can do is make our bed every single day. He calls it an act of discipline. He says, because when you do that, you have at least one thing that you successfully completed that day. So even if the rest of your day is a failure, at least you made your bed and accomplished something, right? So the discipline of doing that daily, day in and day out, can really lead someone to great things. So one thing I've come to learn in life is we need to celebrate those little things, right? Especially when it comes to children, or just life in general. Celebrate the little moments. Were we able to get our child to try broccoli tonight at dinner? If so, then celebrate that little moment. Were we able to abstain from eating an extra bowl of ice cream that had been calling our name in the middle of the night? If so, then consider that a win. If we were able to complete a small task or project for work, we should celebrate that too. So if we're able to consistently wake up every single day and make our bed, and that might be the only thing that we accomplish that day, we can celebrate those small victories in life. You see, too often we're looking for that giant Super Bowl victory, right? Or the once-in-a-lifetime win that will fail to see those little successes we have along the way. So by only looking for the major wins and large successes, we fail to see how we succeed on a daily basis. Then in turn, we begin to think we might be failing. We're not doing our job enough, we're not doing enough in life, and the exact opposite might be true. On another note, I feel I should be a little open with how I feel about churches and schools, and preschools in particular, and how they can contribute to their communities. You see, simply based upon our reading from the book of Hebrews today, it's clear that discipline is a necessary element to rearing children. Yet there's a commonality and a fear in the world today that we don't like other people to discipline our children, right? And I'm kind of guilty of that myself too. If they're in the grocery store and they grab a giant jar of pickles, and the clerk says, well, maybe if you're 2 years old, you shouldn't grab a giant glass jar of pickles. And I say, put that back. I might get a little upset at them saying that at your child, right? But somewhere along the way, we have to appreciate some kind of discipline that is given to us through other people. It really does take a village to raise a child. So the same could be said for us as individuals, though. We don't like criticism. We don't like constructive feedback, however you might want to paint that. And most of us like hearing positive things. But the truth and the reality is it does take some discipline in our lives for us to grow and become better people. So as such, what better village to be a part of than a church and a loving preschool that wants to help our child get raised and see the best happen for them in life, right? That's all people want. They want the best for our children, not critiquing our parenting or questioning our modes or methods, maybe. They want the child to succeed in life. So throughout the history of this 35-year-old school, there have been thousands of children that have come through these doors. Even in these last 3 years that I've been here, I've seen some amazing children come through, and maybe even some crazy ones too. But they've all been loved exactly the same. And that's the amazing thing about it, right? The love is shared whether they're crazy or whether they're wonderful and amazing. All these children are treated exactly the same as God's precious child, and as a child that deserves love, compassion, and maybe even some discipline. So there truly is a great deal of love and hope and compassion under all of these roofs here at TPC in the TPC Preschool Cottage. Again, though, it's not always this discipline that comes from consequences or timeouts or corrections, but maybe in learning good habits and expanding one's heart and their mind and in finding ways to be a better child, a better person, and a better family overall. You see, no pressure, but raising a child is probably one of the biggest responsibilities anyone can have. And I wish someone told me that before I had children, right? It's a tough business. So whether that role for us as a parent, a grandparent, a church member, a friend, or a teacher, we all have a part to play in shaping the future of this world. But think about it. The child has any potential to become anything in life, right? But they need that guidance to become the best they can possibly be. And sometimes that involves discipline. Sometimes it involves compassion. But these children, they can either flourish or they can falter. They can maintain a disciplined life or diverge off a beaten path. They can become leaders or followers. They can learn or they can teach. They can become beacons of hope and love for other people. And now we all have that responsibility to ensure that we all become the best people that God has created us to be. Each and every person in this room. And each child that is a part of our life. You see, one of the major points from Jesus throughout all of his teachings were that we need to firstly share love and peace with other people. But also we need to ensure that we teach and equip others to do the very same. We need to help mold and shape these little hearts and these little minds that we have the responsibility of raising and teaching. so that they too are encouraged to be kind and not hurtful, so that they have an understanding of discipline and are grateful for people that care enough to discipline them in their life? So in turn, are we not grateful for the people that have disciplined us over the years? I know I am. As hard as my dad could be sometimes, and as hard as discipline was in the moment, I learned a great deal from those instances. So at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, what difference in someone else's life have I made today? Or whether that's a stranger's, a friend's, a family member's, a child, or maybe even our own. Have we made a difference? But did we engage in some kind of kindness or exhibit a type of grace, or maybe even enact discipline, which could apply to someone else or ourselves? Were we intentional? Were we patient? And were we willing to celebrate the small victories that we had that day? Or did we display some words or actions that we might regret others seeing and emulating in their life? You see, sometimes it's as simple as planting just a little seed. 35 years ago, this started out as a mom's morning out group, the preschool. Just so some moms could get together and drop their children off and go have some coffee or whatever was around here that day, get some orange juice or whatever. And just have a nice morning out. And here we are 35 years later as a church and a preschool that has served countless families and countless children and made a huge difference in the world. So it's obvious that God lives here. It's obvious that you guys are all here today, and that God loves each and every one of us, from us to our children, to our grandchildren, and God just wants the best for us. So think to yourself, what is my role in that part? How can I make my child or my grandchild or the child I teach or the child I see running down the halls become the best person they can possibly be? And that's what we should take with us today. Amen.